and welcome to a special edition of In Studio SCF. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television, and we're very happy to have with us today 4 veterans that have served our country. Talk about not only the benefits, but the services that are provided by the State College of Florida. So let's welcome our guests now. Joining us, first of all, is Brian Thomas. Brian is the Special Assistant to Dr. Carol Prosfield. Brian is, you're an Army veteran, yes. Retired Sergeant Major. You look very young for a retired Sergeant Major, Brian, but you served 27 years in the Army. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for being here. And you've got a great background. You've served in Kosovo in 2001. You deployed in support of the global war on terrorism to Iraq in 2003 and 2005, and in Afghanistan in 2011. That's a great service record.
Well, thank you.
And thank you very much for being here. And joining Brian today is Alana. And Alana, you're a Navy veteran.
That's correct.
And you served 4 years in the Navy. What was your specialty in the Navy?
I was a damage controlman, 3rd class.
Excellent. You're currently pursuing an Associate in Arts degree at SCF, and you want to earn a BA with hopes of being a nurse. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And the possibilities of continuing your education at SCF with their nursing program. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Sounds good.
Now, also joining us as another guest is Chris Stow. Chris, you're a discharged active duty Marine, correct? And you spent 20 years in the private sector in various executive and advisory roles serving private and public sectors. You want to combine your experience and education to advance your roles in working with DoD. So tell us a little bit about your roles in service.
I had a number of different roles. I worked with, initially I started out as an MP in the Marine Corps, mm-hmm. and had a very great tour with that, and then I went main side and did some stuff out with 2nd Marines, and then spent some time in a JAG office, and then ultimately did some stuff with disaster management and that on main side, Camp Lejeune. So.
Well, we also want to give you an opportunity for everyone here to talk about SCF and the role that it played in your education and your further success. And also joining us today is William Graydon. Bill, may I call you Bill?
Please.
You're a U.S. Army veteran. How many years did you serve in the Army?
Just under 8.
8 years, and you're the Veterans Advisor for the State College of Florida at Venice. But you're also an alumnus of SCF as well.
Yes, I am.
Well, and that's great to have an alumnus who has then moved on to other opportunities within the SCF family. And here's a question. I want to pose it to Brian first of all. SCF is very focused on helping veterans. As the drawdown continues and the war on terror and Afghanistan, there's a lot of veterans returning, back to the United States for educational benefits. SCF welcomes them with open arms. And tell us a little bit about SCF's emphasis on helping veterans.
Well, there's a recognition that the freedoms we enjoy are the results of those veterans' efforts. So at the college, it's both to help them and to thank them for their service. And education is such a key component for the transition of any veteran from the military service to civilian life.
Right. Well, and Bill, I'll defer to you as an advisor on there. What are some of the efforts that are being made by SCF, to kind of transition that veteran into the educational community?
I would say the biggest initiative is having 2 dedicated veteran centers on each campus, the Bradenton campus and the Venice campus, and also having dedicated college employees, specifically for the purpose of helping the veteran student return to college and reintegrate. But I would say the amazing support of the administration and also the fellow student body mm-hmm. is just welcoming the veterans back to the campus. It's that's really the dedicated staff. I can't tell you how much that means.
Absolutely.
When I first started at SCF, we didn't have a dedicated veteran person. So there were a lot of, and now this was just the beginning of a flux of vets coming back to campus.
Exactly.
And some vets were kind of lost. And veteran benefits can be complicated.
And that's a good point that you made there. You know, sometimes to be able to navigate through those benefits and what one's entitled to can be kind of overwhelming. But that's why having a dedicated staff at the school itself really helps.
Without a doubt.
And tell us, and we have two students here, and we're going to defer to them to find out how easy it was for them. And Alana, we'll start with you if we could. What brought you to SCF? What were those unique set of circumstances that brought you to SCF in the first place?
Well, I moved to South Venice, which is pretty close to the college itself. And I liked the programs they offered. They not only offered an associate's in nursing, but they also offered up to a bachelor's as well. So it was going to be very easy to climb. But not only was the process integrating back into civilian society easier there,
Right.
Bill made it very easy. He was very inviting, and immediately when I walked in the doors, they sat me down at the computer and explained the process and the classes and made it all step by step and made it all very welcoming.
And I would suggest also that not having a dedicated person, you didn't have to go to different places to find out, well, you have to go to this place and back. So having that one central location with Bill, helping you, that was a great deal of benefit to you.
Of course.
And also, being able to navigate what benefits that you were entitled to under the VA. Is that correct?
Yes.
And let's talk to Chris. Chris, tell us where you are in your studies right now and why you chose SCF for your continued education.
Well, just as Alana mentioned, when you enter SCF as a veteran, there are facilities and people that really make it easy for you to navigate through the process. I have a couple of different reasons for choosing SCF, and they kind of align with what direction I hope to go. Currently, I contract with the Defense Department doing various training with active duty personnel. And having that at hand, it's easy for me to say SCF is a place to go when these guys are getting ready to exit or transition out of the service into either reserve or just completely exit the service, right. Either via retirement or for whatever other reason, discharge. So I saw an opportunity to where I could maybe participate in a number of programs with some of the experience that I had in the private sector, and lending a hand to these guys that are getting out and gals that want to go out into the community and reintegrate. And the educational process is very important as a first step, because what it does is allow them a little bit of time to navigate back into society and acclimate to a civilian life. And we have to remember that these are very young people that have,
exactly.
Many of them, not all of them, but many of them either are very young or they've spent a lifetime in the military, right, under a very different set of standards. And the camaraderie that they have in those particular services is something that we try to incorporate into the way that we service the vets as well. They know that we have a special place for vets, we have special facilities for vets, we have special resources for vets. I was fortunate enough to spend some time as the president for the Student Veterans of America chapter in Venice, and we did a lot to enhance the services offered by the college that we can continue to pass on to new students as they come in. So.
Well, and I think that's a great point. And Brian, I'm going to ask you to kind of follow up on that, if I may. As a veteran, veterans bring a unique set of skills, discipline, decision making through their years of service. Coming into a collegiate atmosphere is a little different, but they still have that system of order and discipline that's very important. And I think also, and I'll defer to the veterans here on the panel, veterans are eager, to participate not only within their community, but within the college itself. Would you agree?
There's a culture that we live with in the military, and it's a culture of selfless service and commitment to the people around you. And I think that's one of the hardest things for veterans when they separate, is that sense of community is taken away from them. When you're in the military and one of the branches of service, you know there's always someone who's going to help you and who's taking care of you.
Right.
And and sometimes maybe it's a squad leader or a platoon sergeant that you really wish would not be as involved in your life, but suddenly when you're out, you realize that, wow, nobody cares if I went to the dentist, or nobody cares how I dress anymore. And so you lose a little bit of that sense of connectedness. So the work that these gentlemen have done down at Venice has really helped to ease that transition and to connect people with other people like them. And so there's a recognition at SCF that it's those intangible things that veterans bring with them, things that don't end up on a resume, that are critically important. And whether that's as an employee or as a student, there are things that veterans bring to the campus and bring to the organization that are very inherent to veterans and natural, that are, not going to say lacking in civilians, but are not things that are focused on throughout their development as much as a veteran's.
And I would say one of those chief things is just a decision-making, a leadership potential that veterans bring, and I think that's a key thing. And let me ask you, Alana, when you were, when you met with Bill and he made that process kind of seamless as you got into the college, did you see other veterans within the Venice campus or throughout the SCF complex who were eager to get back into the education process?
Absolutely. I've met quite a few of them in my classes as well. And a few of them actually work in the building that helped me through the process themselves and helped me get my classes. And we have a lot to discuss. It's nice. It's nice to have that connectedness after so many years of being on a ship with my friends and fellow people. It's really nice to bring back those memories and have that.
And there's a sense of community, within the veteran community itself.
Of course.
And Bill, let me ask you this: when a student comes, and a veteran, and they've done their service, they've, whether it's a tour or whether it's a career within the military. What are the steps that you take them through to kind of get that process started and to kind of make it easy for them to get into the university or college and start working?
Well, one of the primary things is what you've already said, is having one person that they can go to, because when you're entering college, a lot of people are overwhelmed at how complex it can be and how many different areas you need to satisfy before you can start registering for classes. So, and then when they're a veteran, we're adding a complicated benefit aspect to that on the back end.
Right.
So that's what we can do, is one, find out where they are in their benefit process and where they are in the college enrollment process, and then also getting a feel of what their ultimate goal is. Is their ultimate goal a 2-year degree, or is it a 3-year degree? Because that can impact the use of their benefits.
Right, and that's very important.
Right.
That's very important for them to realize from the onset, is how long their benefits are going to be available to.
Yes, without a doubt. So as veterans, and as when we know that, let's see, there are consequences to the actions that we make. And we learn that in the military, and it's very important that we pay attention to what we're doing. When they become a veteran and they reintegrate, the same thing applies when they're using those benefits, because the choices that they make are irrevocable. They can never go back, so that's why it's important that someone's there to tell them, look, if you do this now, this is going to happen in the future.
Right.
So that's what we have to help them with. And make no doubt about it, our veterans coming back today, they have some complex issues. They really do. And having a supportive environment for them is so important, especially in education, because that's their pathway.
Exactly, and I would kind of reiterate what Brian said earlier. The education is such an important asset for all of these veterans to have, and as SCF continues to do and to offer not only these continuous pathways, but the ease of which you want to assimilate people back into our community. That's very important.
Without a doubt.
So let's talk a little bit about the numbers of veterans that SCF does. Bill, I'll defer to you again, if I may.
Yeah.
You know, throughout the SCF, you know, the Venice and the Bradenton campuses, how many veterans are you serving now?
Right now, currently, a total population of veterans and dependents is just shy of 400.
That's pretty
that we have.
impressive.
It is. The Bradenton campus, obviously being the larger campus, has the majority of our veterans, and the Venice campus, smaller, you know, we're just above over 100 there. Now, I include the dependent in that number because the dependents are very special
It
to
could
us
be a
as well.
spouse, you know,
Spouse,
child.
a child, and we view all dependents as an extension of the veteran.
Exactly.
So we create that welcoming environment for them because the dependents, they're used to a military environment. So having that for them is wonderful.
So, you know, with 400 between Venice and Bradenton, I mean, that's a good sized number. And at both campuses, both Bradenton and Venice, you have that dedicated guidance that you provide. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if somebody goes to the Bradenton campus and wants to enroll, and they can go directly to the benefit advisor and say, listen, I'm out of the military, I want to get on with my education, and they will direct them to Bill or your counterpart at the Bradenton campus.
Correct.
So that's an easy step right off the bat.
It is. I can't tell you how far ahead, and you know, obviously I'm bragging about SCF of at our level, at the community college level, that we have what we have here, and my job is an added duty elsewhere. And it's a complex thing, and it needs attention.
And Brian, I would say, you know, from a administrative viewpoint, the decision to expand your veterans services advice is just a wonderful decision. It's far-reaching, it's very visionary, and that purpose to know that, you know, veterans not only have served their country, we have an obligation to provide the best services possible, but also administratively to provide people like Bill and his staff to help those. And I think from the administrative point of view, that's really a wise decision.
Well, it is, and it's definitely needed because I had the advantage, I got my education through the military while I was on active duty, which was very simple, but to navigate the benefits that are there for our veterans, it's a very complex process. And so Bill, Dennis England and his team on the Bradenton campus, they really do some great work to help our veterans, because the result is if you get too frustrated with something, you might not follow through. Or you might go down a path that really doesn't help you get the education that you would hope to get. And so we are very committed to helping veterans through our veterans advisors, but also the college is also committed to filling those gaps in financially that exist around the veterans benefits.
And that's a key point. You know, helping with the financial aspect of it is very important.
Yeah, and this year our foundation fully endowed a veteran scholarship. So when Bill and Dennis encounter veterans that have either used up their benefits or there are costs to their education that aren't covered by their VA benefits, they can send them to our foundation and they can apply for scholarships that will cover those gaps to, again, keep them in the education pipeline and help them complete their education and their transition.
And, you know, the SCF Foundation does remarkable things with a wide variety of things. And Chris, you know, we recently covered you at the SCF Foundation event, and, you know, you were one of the participants in that event. Tell us why that SCF Foundation is important for you.
Well, I think it's the foundation has been exemplary in their assistance in pursuing additional resources for veterans. Bill and I had an idea with regard to a bridge loan program that helps accommodate vets in the gaps with different book fees and so on and so forth. The Student Veterans of America group got together and started a program. We initiated a book exchange program as a part of the SVA, and of course we were we participated in the efforts, working very closely with the foundation with regard to the endowment of the scholarship, which was incredibly endowed on Veterans Day this past year, so we were pretty excited about that.
And that's a wonderful thing, not only for the foundation, but for all those people that are going to be the beneficiaries of the foundation's generosity.
You bet. And the great thing about SCF with regard to the programs that they pursue and create in terms of veterans is it expands beyond just the program content themselves. Right. I mean, the culture of the college is really attuned to the veteran, and partly because, and I think this is exactly what we want to get across, and that is, it's pretty amazing what a group of veterans can do in coordination with a willing participant, in this case, an educational institute, to grow the opportunities, not just for the veterans themselves, but for the community.
Right. And I think you spoke very eloquently about that at the foundation event that we were taped on behalf of the foundation.
Right.
I want to pose this question, and especially to Alana and Chris here. I mean, in your circle, there's a lot of veterans out there. And, that decision-making process to go back to school, to take advantage of some of the opportunities that, Bill talked about, sometimes that's difficult for them. And, sometimes, as you mentioned and as Bill mentioned, veterans are going through a lot of other issues as well. What do you say to those young men and women to encourage them to take advantage of not only the program at SCF, but other educational programs? Alana, what would you say to those young veterans out there?
I would say that it is an absolutely rewarding opportunity, absolutely. To go back to school after so many years of service and just to enjoy the passions and get that education that everybody so rightly deserves after their service.
Well, some people think when they've served in the military, well, I've done my MOS, I'm skilled at this, I don't need to go back to school, I don't want to do that, it's a lot of work, it's too much effort, it's not convenient, whatever those reasons are. But, and I'm sure, with coming out of the Navy and, relocating, you've faced some of those challenges. What was that driving force that said to you, I need to get back into the educational process?
Well, at first I was hesitant. I will agree. But I contacted the SCF, Mr. Graydon, and he laid out all of my opportunities and told me that I had my free education waiting for me whenever I wanted it. And I told him that I wanted to start immediately. And I didn't want to wait anymore. After he weighed out all my options and told me everything that I could have after I waited so long in the service on active duty, I don't think I could wait any longer. And I wouldn't tell any other veterans to wait, because that is waiting for everybody right there. That's
an excellent point. And kudos to Bill and his staff for doing that. But I would suggest, while using the word free, you've actually earned those benefits. Right. Those are benefits as a veteran for your service to your country that you have earned and are waiting for every veteran that's out there. Now, Bill, Chris, I would pose this question to you. You've worked with a lot of veterans and coming back. And as I said, a lot of veterans have issues. They'll come back and they're not sure where they want to go. Your success, not only within the private sector, but also in the educational sector, has got to be kind of an indicator for people that they can do it. What do you say to those young veterans that you see to encourage them to use their benefits and to get back into the educational arena?
I would say to these vets that this is the next step in your life. And there are a lot of things that go with this. And one of the things that we can really hone in on, and that is, not only does the education or attending an institution or pursuing an education give you the benefits of that particular education area of study, but it also weans you off of one way of life and introduces you into the next phase of your life as a veteran. So as you go through your, attend your classes, and as you attend the college, and you become familiar with the process and so on, you are learning also how to interact at a civilian level, number one. Number two, you're learning different pieces of information that are going to help you as you move forward, and you're also getting an education in your area of interest. So there's a very broad spectrum of things that you gain and achieve by going through the process of education in addition to the specific area of study. And I think it's absolutely imperative that these guys get that exposure, because once that happens, then what we end up doing is we pass along the veteran once they graduate into the community so they can be viable members of the community, contributing members, and also know how to interact within the community.
And I think that's
one
really
area
important. As Brian mentioned, the veterans bring a lot of intangibles, to the table, whether it's in the classroom or it's in the community. And I want to pose this question, for Bill and Brian at the same time. SCF has a wide variety of programs that are available, just a wide variety, in the associate arts degree, but also, some continuing in the four-year degrees as well. As veterans come in, and they're unsure of what path to take, tell us a little bit about some of the programs that are available at SCF for those students to take advantage of.
Well, the key thing for us in terms of providing programs is our veterans have already decided this is where they want to live. That's why either they started out here, or like Alana, they moved here for family reasons. So they need to find the education that fits them living here. We don't want to provide them the first 2 years of a degree that then they have to move somewhere else outside of the area to complete it. So that's why it's very important that with our baccalaureate programs that they provide a pathway, either for students to get their first 2 years in their associates and move on to USF, Sarasota Manatee, to New College, or to be able to stay at SCF and complete it. The education component is so important for our veterans because it validates our experience in the military in terms that a civilian employer can understand.
Exactly.
And that's very, very important. The intangible things that we bring aren't things that go on a resume, but they're skills that we have.
Right.
Some employers recognize these things very well. The college does that in an excellent way. To recognize those things that a veteran brings in addition to the skill sets. And the diploma, the degree, validates those things that we bring with us from the military.
That's an excellent point. I think that's critical to understand that those intangibles don't go in not on a piece of paper, but they help in the pursuit of those academic credentials. And Alana, I'll just defer to you for a moment, if I may. You're going for your associate's degree right now, is that correct?
Oh, yes, it is.
All right, but you're interested in becoming an RN. But within the state college, you could stay within the state college and get your RN through your nursing degree. Is that correct, Brian?
That is correct.
And that's very exciting. The nursing program at SCF continues to really flourish, and it's kind of one of the gems of the SCF programs.
It really is, and it allows our nurses to go out and get jobs and then stay in the program online to get their bachelor's degree as well. And there's such a high demand from our local hospitals for our nursing students. We don't want to see them have to leave the area to finish a bachelor's degree, or to not pursue a bachelor's degree because they have a job, they have a family, they're settled here in this community.
So, Lana, you could do your AA at SCF, go and get your RN, and then go to work at one of the area hospitals, all within this area. You never have to go out of town.
That's the plan.
That's great. Now, Bill, I want to go back to you, if I may, for a moment. Veterans have a wide variety of issues as they come back into the workforce. Finding the right job, finding the educational, navigating all of those variety of things. If they want to come and sit down and just talk to you and say, hey, listen, I'm out of the service, I'm retired, or whatever it is, how do they do about it? They just make an appointment with you and come down and sit down, even if they're not sure whether they want to go on to the college or not?
Right. Absolutely. It's an open door. You can schedule an appointment with me or my colleagues in Bradenton at any time. And it happens quite often. I think all of us at this table are familiar with, it's a very surreal experience when you sign your papers and you're released from active duty. It really, truly is. It's all of a sudden just, okay, what now? And we're also familiar with the term called situational awareness. And so what helps is if that veteran, if you're recently discharged veteran, they'll be in this space where I like to call it the catch if they come into SCF or any educational institution. And so if we provide them the situational awareness from veteran to veteran and say, right, okay, look, this is what's really happening. This is what's going on around you. You're gonna, this time adjustment for you. These things will happen, and be aware of it. And here's what's in place for you to be able to combat that uneasiness, if that makes sense. So like Brian said, just having the culture of providing the space, providing the personnel and the tools to be there, and also providing another veteran or a veteran student that can listen and help that student, that veteran, go through the process. The benefits you can't count. You can't quantify it. You really, truly can't.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. So, and I would encourage veterans who, are out of the service, maybe they're back in the workforce, maybe they have a family to support, but if they want to continue their education, all they have to do is go online to www.scf.edu, go to the Veterans tab on there, and they can find how to contact you. And they could just schedule something to come in and perhaps talk to you and say, listen, how do I get through this? What are my next steps? And that's, right off the bat, I would say it makes it a lot easier.
Without a doubt. It's incredibly easy. And there's several different options that, as veterans, a lot of the times when they got out from the military, they know exactly what they want to do and how fast they want to do it. Mm-hmm. So as a veteran, they can have some their military experience translate into college credits, which will accelerate their graduation. It's not much, but they can get some, mm-hmm, which is a phenomenal advantage. So for those veterans who know exactly what they want to do, we have programs that can fit that exact need, like an associate in science, in engineering technology, or business management, or entrepreneurship, which a lot of veterans are showing interest in.
Right.
So they have that pathway. Or they have the broader pathway where they want to go farther with the Associate in Arts for transfer, like Brian said, to University of South Florida, or if we hope, staying at SCF, right, or getting a Homeland Security degree.
And I would also suggest, and I'd like to hear your comments on it, as a veteran going back into the educational thing, the amount of training that one receives as an active duty is pretty intense. It's top of the line training for a wide variety of skill sets. Bringing that knowledge and going back into an academic thing where it's very demanding, that veteran brings a lot to the table. Would you agree, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. And not only that, the breadth of that goes further into the institution too. In that while the veteran does bring things not only to the college but the community, SCF has been aware of the fact that in dealing with veterans, it's much different than dealing with a traditional student right out of high school. Right. And so we've actually held some panels with some faculty members that have had some great questions and have talked through different means of communicating and interacting with vets that really pull out the best of both sides. And so the next thing you know, you see a vet and a faculty member coming together on an idea, and then it comes to fruition within the college environment. And it's fantastic to see that evolve. And speaking to the point you mentioned earlier with regard to SCF and the diversity of programs, I'm one that's actually graduating with an associate's and a bachelor's degree for a very specific master's program that I hope to attend. So it has made it just easy to transition from one to the next, and then moving on to the next phase. And I would encourage anybody that's interested in something along those lines to really look at the programs, because they're phenomenal. They really are.
So, a key success story there with Chris's story and in his efforts, not only on behalf of veterans, but also his community outreach, has got to be a great success for SCF.
Well, it is, and Chris is a great example of another thing too, and that's that, yes, we get an extensive amount of training and education while in the military, but our veterans also, especially those that have served in Iraq and Afghanistan, have been exposed to leadership opportunities
Exactly.
in some high-intensity, critical situations that people their age won't see
Never.
ever, or if not for 20 years. So they bring that exposure to knowing how to lead others and how to take charge, and as well as you cannot be an effective leader if you're not a good follower. And these are the kind of things that they bring onto the campus, they bring into the classroom, and they take with them into civilian employment that smart employers recognize.
And I'll just follow up with that, if I may, because SCF is very focused on workforce development. You work very closely with business and industry throughout this area, throughout the region. Develop those skills that employers are looking for. So veterans, first of all, they've got to step up perhaps with their already developed skills. Now they have an educational component to that. So employers are really looking at SCF to help develop that.
Well, the challenge for our veterans is to recognize that you have those skills.
That's right.
Because those are things that while you were serving, you did on a daily basis, and you didn't think a whole lot about it because that was the mission. You saw the opportunity, you took charge of a situation. And then when it comes time to suddenly write a resume that says all the things you did, you draw a complete blank.
Yeah.
Because you haven't had an individual accomplishment
It's a
in
group,
years.
yeah.
It was the team. It was my soldiers accomplished. That was a challenge for me to suddenly take credit for all these things that had happened when I didn't feel comfortable with it,
Yeah.
but two, those were accomplishments that I motivated my soldiers to achieve.
Right.
And now I had to try to show my skills on a resume, and it's a significant challenge. So it's helping our veterans recognize what they bring, and a lot of them will realize they bring a lot more. Employers
Exactly.
want people that can think. They want people that can reason, that can lead, in addition to having the skill sets.
Decision makers, problem solvers, people who have initiative and have that kind of a momentum to move forward. Those are all things that employers work for. And then with the educational component combined with that, it's a valued asset for any organization.
Absolutely.
So, we're kind of winding down here a little bit. Chris, did you have a point?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Brian's point in regards to acknowledging the skill sets. SCF has a career resource center that helps the veterans identify those different pieces or different skill sets that they've accomplished and helps them transpose that into a resume. And there's a number of workshops that are continually going on to help them do that. And I've specifically heard veterans come out of the workshop and say, wow, I didn't realize I was so talented. And it's a great realization that, in fact, just to his point, that veterans aren't really aware of what skills they do have, and so helping them understand the concept of putting that on paper is a very
Did you find that,
active thing.
Alana? Have you used that career workshop?
No, I haven't yet, actually.
Well, then, that's a great resource to be able to do. And I would suggest, Bill, if I may, that, aside from the initial, helping that student get into college and showing them the benefits and helping them navigate the process for enrollment, the follow-up to that is, as Chris mentioned, is that you have that career advisory workshops that continually support veterans through their educational time at SCF. Those are kind of walk hand in hand, I would say.
Without a doubt. And we do have a workshop. It's Translating Military Experience. And I can tell you that it's a real issue that, in fact, a study that we reference with this workshop was done, I believe, by the Center for New American Security in 2010. And there were 36 companies that took part of this survey. And it was over 50% of them said that the top reason that they had difficulty hiring veterans was that they couldn't translate their experience. So that's where we're helping, like Chris said, with these workshops to let them know that, yes, what you did on a daily basis can translate into civilian language that an employer can recognize and on paper. Because that's the key, is recognizing it on paper.
And I think that's a critical thing, you know. I mean, it's great to have that first step where they walk in the door and they sit down with you, but also to be able to follow up with that, to say, how can I take my skills, my education, and segue that into the workforce? And that's a really critical thing. And as I mentioned before, Brian, you know, having the administration and Dr. Prosfield emphasis and her guidance and the guidance of the school with an emphasis on helping veterans is such an important community asset.
And it's not an act. It's not done to grab headlines. It's a belief and it's a commitment. In her Veterans Day speech last fall, Dr. Probsfield said that a veteran will always have trouble telling you what they can do, but they'll never tell you what they can't do. And that's just part of our culture and part of our ethos as veterans is we're going to get the job done. And we're going to take charge and we're going to make sure that everybody comes back. So it's just an extreme commitment throughout the campus, through the educators, through the staff and faculty, and through the students' commitment to each other to help them get through the process.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the faculty. I'd like to take a moment on that because SCF is really known for the caliber and the quality of the faculty at all the campuses, you know, the Lakewood Ranch campus, Venice, and the Bradenton. The quality of the faculty there really does help the student. You know, they're concentrated, you know, there's not those large 300 seat auditoriums where you barely can see the instructor. But the faculty really does help. Have you found that to be the case, Alana, as you take some of your classes, working closely with the faculty?
Absolutely. They're very small classes, and the teachers are always there to answer questions, or any questions I have I can refer back to the veterans assistants here as well. So it's nice. It's very nice.
So, you know, tell us some of the classes that you're taking right now. What have you got on your agenda?
Oh, quite a bit actually. Intro to biology, the lab as well. I got English classes, human development psychology, which is the second psychological class. Currently, I just enrolled in anatomy and physiology in the lab as well for next semester, getting classes together.
Wow.
Yep.
So that's kind of a full schedule, you know, to do things.
I've had a lot of time to think about it.
Bill, what are you doing? You're getting ready to move on. What are some of the things that you're taking right now? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
Sorry. I'm just finishing up on the final core classes within the Homeland Security degree. And, you know, I have to say that the faculty's been phenomenal. James Carlino is one of the adjunct instructors. He's also the chief of police up at Sarasota. He's a fantastic instructor, and it just lends to the quality of people that they really bring in that have experience. I think he's retired from, or he was up in Chicago or some big city. I don't want to say that, but really, just his qualifications are phenomenal, and of course the program directors and the staff. One of the reasons I chose SCF, and I have to tell you that, you know, is when you walk in the administrative building on the Venice campus, at least in my case, and you start asking some questions, they're immediately answered. You feel like family. You feel like you're comfortable. You can ask any question, and you know that there's going to be an answer and a solution. And overall, I think SCF is going to continue to be pragmatic in its approach with veterans and other students alike. And it was a very good choice for me. It fit perfectly for me, and I'll look forward to graduating here in a few weeks.
Well, and congratulations to you on that. And that's an interesting point that you brought up. And I'd just like to mention this, that, you know, SCF, you know, has developed the Homeland Security degree specialty, which I think is a wonderful thing. There's not too many, you know, colleges that offer that type of thing. Why was that important to develop that program, Brian?
Well, we develop our baccalaureate programs in response to the employers.
Right.
They tell us what they need and the kind of skills that they need those students to have and our graduates to have. So it's done in partnership. There's no point in us doing a degree that doesn't isn't a pathway to employment for a student.
Right.
Because that's how we best serve our community, is providing the community with our highly skilled graduates. So we continue to adapt, we continue to take input from those employers, and we get a lot of help from them as well to provide instruction, to provide internships, which are very critical for students.
And I think that's great, have that kind of partnership with the employer itself, or they'll approach the college and say, we need to develop this type of skill set, for future opportunities. But also to develop that partnership so SCF students perhaps might intern or might, end up being employed by a certain company. I think that's a great kind of cooperation within the region, actually. I want to go around the table, if I may, and just get some final comments. And Alana, we're going to start with you, if we may, and just talk a little bit, not only about your experience at SCF, but also what would you say to those veterans that are out there that may be on the fence, or maybe they don't see this on their horizon? What would you say to that? And also, I want you to end on what your SCF experiences has meant to you.
All right. Well, what I would say to the veterans who are on the fence would say that they should go for it. That, like you said before, it's your next step. This is what you need to do. This is what you've earned. So you should take that next step in your life and reward yourself with your educational benefits. And my experience personally, it feels like the college, the veterans, and the civilian educators themselves, they're all connected. Personally, Bill and people in the Veterans Building have walked me to the people I need to talk to file all the paperwork, to get my grades in order, the things that I needed to do to apply. Here's what you need to do. Here it is, and here's where you go from there. So it made it so much easier because everybody was so connected and welcoming.
That's a great comment. Chris, what about you? First of all, what are you going to say to those veterans? And I'm sure you have a lot of contact with veterans, who are coming back into the workforce, and they're unsure. Maybe they have other issues that they're trying to deal with, and you deal with this, almost all the time. But what would you say to those veterans to kind of, encourage them to participate at SCF? And I want to hear what your SCF experience has meant to you.
Well, to the veterans, I would say the mission is success, and this is the first phase of the next step of that mission in integrating into the community. There's a lot of things that you will accomplish by moving forward with education, and we mentioned those things earlier. So don't hesitate, don't stop, keep moving forward, and the results will be your personal success. And I think everybody here and everybody that knows the sacrifices that have been extended by these men and women are worthy of that. And so that's what we want. That's what we hope for. As I said earlier, my personal experiences have been phenomenal with SCF. For me, it was a perfect fit. I'm a single father with a 10-year-old daughter. The flexibility and the programs and the ability to maneuver through some of the pliabilities there have been just phenomenal for me. They've been really welcoming, and it's been great. The staff is easy to speak with, and as I move forward, SCF is going to follow me in many ways, and I hope to still be engaged in some of their efforts as we move forward.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Bill, you've had everybody sing your praises here today for the level of effort that you've continued to provide. You and the staff and the people at the Braden office done an exceptional job of making that transition from military life into an education component very important. Not only are you an alumnus of SCF, but now you're paving that way, continue to pave that way for veterans. First of all, what are you going to say to veterans to encourage them to come? And what is the most important key ingredient you think that veterans should know about getting into SCF?
What do I want to say to veterans? First, I want to say thank you to my fellow veterans. I'm in awe of each veteran that I'm able to serve and help every day, especially our combat men and women who have served. It's a phenomenal experience. It's essential. It's essential for them to take advantage of this pathway to education. As everyone keeps saying at this table, it is the next step. So what do they need to do? They need to go online and they need to apply to get into the college and let us help them do the rest. Mm-hmm. And then they need to initiate using their veterans' educational benefits.
Right. That they've earned.
That they've earned. SCF, it was MCC when I went, but SCF was a life-changing experience, and it was all veteran related. I had started and began under the Montgomery, the old GI Bill, mm-hmm. And then the post 9/11 GI Bill came into effect while I was a student there. So that created this huge tsunami of veterans coming in.
Exactly.
And that was the catalyst for starting the Veterans Club on the campus. And then 2 years later, we had the Veterans Center, and we had dedicated veteran staff and advisors. And now we have, thanks to the efforts of Chris largely, an SCF endowed veteran scholarship that's
excellent.
That's phenomenal. And SCF helped me do that, and it can help all of our veterans do that. It's so simple. It's mind-blowing.
I mean, it's a wonderful program, and thanks to your efforts and the staff that you have and the staff of the Bradenton campus, you continue to kind of lead the way and make the path a little bit easier for those who are coming up, and you're to be congratulated for that.
Thanks.
Brian, this is a wonderful panel here that you put together, and thank you for doing this. It's really evident that the effort that's being put forth by SCF to help and support veterans is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. It's the quality and the caliber of the people that are coming to SCF. If Alana and Chris are any indication, you're head and shoulders above. But with individuals like Bill and your other staff of veterans thing, it provides such an easy path for veterans to transition into an educational community.
Well, the veterans' benefits are earned. They're not a reward, they're an obligation to our veterans for their service. And
exactly.
To not use them is a tremendous waste. And our veterans today have more benefits than they've ever had, and exactly. In the economic times ahead, maybe the best veterans benefits packages ever with the post 9/11 GI Bill that you can give to your family members, right. That you can pass on. And so that commitment, not just to the veterans, but to their families, is really critical. And every veteran that we get on campus is a win for SCF, because that just makes us that much better with each one that we add.
And again, I think what you've done at SCF, what all of you have done on behalf of veterans is phenomenal. And the leadership from SCF, from Dr. Prosfield on down, to continue to keep that emphasis and that focus and that level of effort to help veterans is just a wonderful thing, and you're to be applauded for that. So unfortunately, we're out of time. Any final comments from anyone? Bill, any last thing? www.scf.edu, they can find out, correct?
Correct. Just search veterans. It'll bring you right to our veterans website page.
Great. Chris, Alana, two excellent students here. You got to be very proud of these people at the college. Bill, again, congratulations for all the hard work and the effort that you've put in to helping veterans. And I'm sure that Alana and Chris are just two of the many, many people that you've helped. And specifically, Brian, I want to thank you for doing this. Retired Sergeant Major, 27 years of service. You're still continuing to help those veterans, and that's a great thing to do.
It's a lifelong commitment.
It's a lifelong commitment. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for joining us on this special edition of SCF in Studio. If you want to find out more information about how SCF can help you, if you're a veteran, if you're a former service member and want to find out how education can help you, get in touch with scf.edu. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on METV.